Hey, everybody. Hey, in the Friday night debate prior to the New Hampshire primary, Andrew Yang, presidential candidate, consistently recited this point of commentary as if it were an absolute statistic, something that was an unassailable, inevitable endpoint for African Americans in the case of future wealth projections. He said that by 2053, African American family wealth will be at zero. In other words, he didn't say it could possibly get there. He didn't say, well, if current trends continue. He didn't say a sentence or paragraph that would allow one to believe that he was talking about a projection and a scenario. He stated what is an observation as if it were fact. Folks, it's not fact. It's based on a study that was recently released, actually in 2017, it's called the Road to Zero Wealth. It's on specifically this problem of declining Black and Latino wealth over the last 30 years. And it does indeed point to the possible projective outcome that, and it says if current trends continue, that by 2053, Black African-American family wealth would be at zero. And this doesn't mean that person won't have an income. We'll definitely have an income, but not what we define as wealth, credit, home ownership, and so on. The reason why I take issue with what Yang said is, and not only that with this report, is it dances around the reasons we really have got to this point, and it never touches on what has to be done to make certain this doesn't happen, but also it completely fails to ignore many of the good news reports that point to increases in Black wealth, and I might add, an African-American tech culture. For example, Morgan DeBaum established Blavity with friends from Howard University and the Afro Tech Festival that they hold annually. They just had it in Oakland last year. Morgan DeBaum and her friends raised $10.6 million to establish Blavity and the Afro Tech event. But you never, well, unless of course you pay attention to Black tech, hear about it. It's still not part of the national conversation. It's certainly not part of the presidential discussion, and should be, as a positive story. There are many examples of African Americans establishing their own companies. And that gets to my point here, because I just established my second tech company. This one's Zenny62 Media, Delaware based. The point that I'm making is that when ways are offered to avoid the slide, the decrease in wealth, it's always something that looks like a welfare program, a special program for housing, or a special tax investment for a district that needs the money that's predominantly minority, predominantly Black, predominantly Latino. Let's call it for what it really is, okay? But you never hear anyone, seldom, I'll be kind, seldom hear anyone, but particularly not in the mainstream media, discuss how venture capitalists need to invest in Black and Latino startups at a far greater rate. And this includes Black venture capitalists. For example, in my case, I went to a Black venture capitalist to attempt to gain him as an angel investor from my blog network. This person told me that he did not invest in media platforms. That's what he told me. Then, by the grace of God, I happened to find out a few weeks later that this same person invested in my friend Sarah Lacey's now closed blog called Pando Daily. Pando Daily is a media platform, which means what? I was lied to. There are a number of instances of blacks who say that they're venture capitalists and then express a desire to invest in minority businesses, but when it comes to actually stepping up to the plate, they don't. On the other hand, there are great examples, like the people who run MAC Ventures and their efforts to invest in Black, Latino, and also women-owned companies. And even if they're not quite ready to invest, they at least give you advice that can help you along to the next phase of growth in your company. Owning a company is the best way for any African-American person to gain wealth in today's society. It's not going to happen in the ways that are suggested by the author of the study called The Road to Wealth, or what Andrew Yang is proposing. His idea of universal income is a great one, but as he would very readily point out, it's on the income side of the ledger. It doesn't say anything about building wealth by helping African Americans who have business ideas, tech expertise, gain the necessary investment to build viable startups, which become the next large companies. Meanwhile, we have organizations like Twitter, which I have to tell you have been taken over by Donald Trump. And even though Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey says he's going to go to Africa because that's the next hotbed for tech, he doesn't explain that the people who are doing tech platform building over there are all, at least in terms of the media, in terms of how the media pays attention to what's happening over there, white. So basically, all Jack Dorsey is going to do is export the American race problem to Africa. Ooh, yay. Stop. Halt. Put on the brakes, Jack. There are many African Americans here, like, for example, in Ferguson, Missouri. Remember that city? Remember that city? That Jack Dorsey himself went to in the wake of the tragic events that caused the murder of Michael Brown. So here's Jack Dorsey trying to present himself as down with the cause and woke and all of this stuff. And yet, last year, he finds himself, not by accident, in the office of Donald Trump, not explaining precisely what kind of deal they came to, and then suddenly suspending the accounts of a number of voices. When you study them, they happen to be of color, or in my case, African American. You can never silence my voice. That's why I built my own platform. But that's not true for many African Americans. What I say to you is this: there is no shame in establishing a powerful system of social relationships among African Americans in tech. Doing that will actually attract people who are white and female and Latino and Asian. You will find that, just as it is true for someone who establishes an organization that happens to be Jewish or happens to be Protestant or any type of combination of ethnicity or religious background, that as long as that group is accepting of others, and they should be, and they will be in the American context, everyone will indeed come to be a part of their better mousetrap. That is always true, and it will certainly be true, and it has been true for African Americans who have established and started their own corporations. If you want to build wealth, you have to start companies. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and visit my new corporate website, Zenny62media.net, and subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube, as I said a few seconds ago, but also bookmark my new flagship blog, oaklandnewsnow.com. All right, see ya.